There we go. Hey, class 8. We did chapter 13 over the past couple days, which are modules. Good news is, even though this is a new concept that we're talking about, through the graded assignments, you guys have seen some of this before. So hopefully it isn't brand new, and it hopefully is starting to fit together some of the things from the graded assignments that are being done kind of in the back end that you didn't know about. The main thing we're talking about is creating, importing, exporting, and using custom and node modules. So there were several key concepts here. I'm just going to skim over this slide so that we can dive into some of them. But some of the key concepts that you're supposed to take away from this: being able to export, import external modules. So they gave you a module, especially in the exercises. You were supposed to take modules that were already made and then bring them into the index JS. You're supposed to be able to create and import custom modules. So not only just importing them, but creating them. So we were able to create a couple functions, call it a module and import it somewhere. Explain why modules are useful. I don't know if the book talked about it, but I don't think they gave really good examples over it. So I'm going to try to do that for you here in a second of the why. It also helps whenever you have a bigger project. When you only have 50 lines of code total, then why don't you just put that in one file and call it done? When you have 500 lines of code, that's hard to look through in one file. So then you start separating that and trying to figure out, well, what would make most sense. So reference and use module properties, use the required import modules, install external node modules. We've been doing that since day one with that npm install for the readline sync, create a module and import it with another file in the same project. Kind of talked about that. And then use the module.exports. As some people realized, there is an S on one of those, but not on both of those. Object to expose modules. Right. So the key concept here is what even is this module? So a module refers to a collection of related functions. Now we have had some files that have only had one function, but generally you can have a collection. You can have one, but usually it's multiple related functions grouped together within a file. These functions contain the code necessary to perform a specific task. So that's talking about they're grouped together for a purpose. And then you usually invoke them within a larger application. So you import them into somewhere else, and then you actually use them there. Modules are created to enhance the organization and structure of your code base. So as we start getting more and more code, we need to start separating that code out and letting different parts or different files do very specific things. But then once we have that method or that module written, we hopefully won't have to go back to it. It's like it's already written. We're just going to use it. Where can you find modules? Well, you can make them locally. Create your own custom ones so they can be on your computer. Node, we've used npm. That's Node Package Manager. We've used it before to pull in what they call core modules. There is a link for this. I guess I forgot to put it here. I don't have it with me, but there is a link to all the npm modules. I might show that here in a second. I'll have to Google it again. And then there are external registries such as npm. So the npm is the external ones. Node has some kind of built in already. So this was a really bad example. It was me trying to come up with a reason why would you have modules, and I just tried to expand on the Scrabble game. So we have this Scrabble game. So we have some code, and then somewhere in your Scrabble game you'll have this function called like run program. You could call it anything that you want to, but I'm just keeping it called run program for your benefit that you've seen that thing before, so you know what I'm talking about. And then you do need to export it. So these are the key things. You need to have some code. You need to have at least an entry point that you're going to call, and then you need to be able to export that. Well, what if instead of making a Scrabble game, we actually wanted to make a website that had multiple games in it? Well, what we could do is make another game, doesn't matter what it is, .js, and we can do the same thing. We can write all the code needed for that game. And we could do this multiple times. So we could have 10 different games, and each of them having their own file to run in. But then we would usually want this index.js. And again, it technically doesn't have to be called index.js. You can call it whatever you want to, but we're gonna stick with the naming conventions we're used to. And we could call index.js, and then we can go and grab these two games and then ask the user, which game do you want to play? The benefit of this is if anything is wrong with the Scrabble game, I can go straight to the Scrabble game code and start debugging it, and I know where it's at. Same thing with any other game. I can just go straight to that code base and know where it's at. And you can imagine if I had 10 games, it would be very difficult for me to know what's going on, how is it working. But if I separate everything and put good parameters around it and good, what we call clean code, you'll be able to dive in and understand at least where the problem is a little bit quicker. Just reading the comments as we go through here. Don't want to miss anything because I saw a lot of comments. So this is something not dealing with what we're doing. There was somebody that posted like, it is very common. So let's switch our brains here. That's why I took a little bit of a break reading comments to see if there's anything I wanted to comment on. But there was a comment, and I wanted to expand upon of like, hey, I've done all this stuff, and I just want to erase everything I did, and I just want to start over. That is extremely normal. It's sometimes easier, or at least feels easier, to just start over than it is to kind of backtrace what we've done and what we haven't. So one thing that I would suggest is anytime you have something working that you like, you commit it. So what committing does is it takes a snapshot of your code at that time. And so if you can take a snapshot, and then you can take 20 snapshots if you really want to. So you can commit as many times as you want to. So you have all these different snapshots. And eventually, when we get even better at Git, we can go back to any of those snapshots that you want to. I don't know if any of you, whenever I was teaching, I would use Google Docs. And Google Docs has a version history. And you can actually go back and see all the different versions in Google Docs, and then just pick the one you want and say, hey, I want it to be right here. Git does the same thing. It's a version control system that allows you to go back to wherever you want. These are two Git commands. It's actually the same one that helps whenever you have committed. And so you have good code, and then you start adding, deleting, and then you're like, oh, I don't even know where I just was at in my previous commit. These things here, the git reset, really tries to go back to your last commit. So anything that you did, there are tools that do like a rollback option in VS Code and other ways, but this reset is a key one that I use quite a bit. The only difference between here is this -- hard. And so the difference is the -- hard removes any changes since your last commit, or the reset unstages any changes. And then as I was typing that out, I'm like, you probably don't even really understand what that means. So I'm going to do one more slide. And so don't take this as truth because I made it up on this, like I just made it up. And so I didn't cross-reference this. But if we talk about our different code levels, up here is where the remote repo lives, which is, for us, it's GitHub. When I do a git pull, it pulls that code down to my local code. And it's a committed code, meaning it took a snapshot of that. So a committed code means there's a snapshot of it. Whenever I work on code, I'm always down here in this working directory. So whenever you go type in, a for loop somewhere, you can save it and then exit out of your program and you come back and it's still there because it's in this working directory, but Git knows nothing about it. So for Git to know anything about it, you guys have been doing this git add, which actually pushes it into what they call a staging area. And then you use a git commit to actually commit the code into a snapshot. So this staging area actually does not save in Git. Like whenever you go to your repo, you see all your committed code, but you never see what's in the staging area. Well, to throw in one more thing, if you want your committed code and you want to remove your staged code, you can use this git reset hard. Head is the commit number. So this is another thing. Don't think too much into it because head is your last commit. Always. You don't have to worry about that. You could replace this head with an actual commit number. And so if I wanted to go back 3 snapshots, if I could find the commit ID for that snapshot I want to go to, I can do git reset hard and then that commit ID, and it'll actually take me back to that snapshot in Git. So I can go back to any version I want to. Let's say that you did add. So in VS Code, it turns green, I think, and it has like an A next to it. And then you're like, oh, I don't want to add that anymore. I just want to go back. You can just do the git reset. And to be honest, if you don't put head on there, it should just go back to the head by default. And it'll remove your stage stuff. So then you can retweak things and then re-add them and then recommit them. So that's a long explanation for what you guys needed to know for this. If you have code that you have not committed yet that you just want to scrap,
do I need to go into?
You can go and just hit git reset -- hard, and it will go back to your last committed code. This only works if you're committing good code, though, because if you're not committing any code, it erases everything. You don't want that. Or if you keep committing bad code because you're like, I'm afraid it's not going to save or whatever, and you're committing bad code, then you're going to want to delete committed code, which is hard too. So only commit code when you know you're at a good safe place, and you know how to get back now. All right. To be honest, with the modules, I think a lot of the exercises, I'm going to show you some do's and don'ts. And then I'm also going to actually show you some things that are not in the book that you might want to know for future reference. But hopefully, based on the book, you can do a lot of this stuff. Again, I always try to go over these. There's your main things that you got to do. But again, your graded assignment is due Thursday. I have been kind of looking. I'm going to maybe even talk to Jamarco about every time I do lecture, I'm going to post the numbers, not the people, but the numbers of people that have turned in some assignments, because I'm excited that some people are turning in assignments really early, and I want that number to go up. It gives you guys more time to focus on whatever you need to and make revisions. And then it also gives the IAs time to help you more. Because if you just at least turn it in, then they can help you. If you're just sitting there and don't talk at all, and then Thursday morning comes, it doesn't help anybody. So anything that I can do to motivate you just to get code, push code, show, and talk to IAs is going to be beneficial. So something about Git before I move on. A question was asked, good practices using GitHub with multiple machines. The biggest thing there is always committing everything. Because if you're always, when you're at one machine and you commit it and push it, then you'll be able to access it on any other machine. If you forget to commit it and push it, not even if you just commit it, you have to push it up or else you won't see it on that other machine. So I know that whenever I was going through, I went to WGU for my computer science degree, and I don't know why they wanted us to use virtual machines. And the same thing happened. I'd have to log in. I'm on my same laptop, but then I'd have to log into their virtual machine to do some things. to then push it up to GitHub, to then get on my same computer, but just in my own browser, to pull it down to my local so I can work on it locally, because their virtual machine was too slow. They didn't give enough resources to it. So I wanted to run it on mine and then eventually push it up. But yeah, just always push code, always push code. That's even more important than committing if you're going to work on a different machine. So you said repeat the difference. I don't know, it's not specific enough for me to understand. So if you want to retype what you're talking about, I'll definitely talk about the difference of something. Right. I'm going to do a little bit. I'm not going to do some coding as much as some coding examples first. So, oh yeah. I'll try to do that in my actual live coding. I'll try to push something, or yeah. You can actually export, import just about anything. We're going to stick to functions, because if it's an array, okay, let me pull up just a little bit of code for that question. Right, so the question was, do we only use import export for functions, or can we do it to other things? If you remember the math.py, that was not a function, that was a number. So you can do import export for anything. What I would struggle with is if when you're writing a module, you want more of that input export type thing, such as you're going to throw in an object to it, it's going to do some calculation, and it's probably going to return an object to you, but you're going to call a function to do the stuff, the action to it. Very rarely are you going to have an object that's not a function that you want to return, except for if it's like pi, or if it's if it's like a user key, like an encryption key that you have to have a certain thing, that you might use globally and want to export and import that. But most of the stuff that you're going to do are going to be functions, because you're wanting to act upon something. So that's where the action comes in. So what I want to do, here in a little bit, I'm going to go over all of these exercises, because I'm going to fine tune some of the things that you guys did and some of the things that I've heard. And so I will be doing that. What I want to do now, though, is show you a couple other things. For instance, not that one. Right. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. First of all, next week is actually unit testing, which is, I'm going to be talking about the graded assignment 2's unit testing. So hopefully that'll help with that as you're reading. But I want to go down to the React part 1. You don't have to do this. I know that I need to zoom in. Okay, so I tried to do it before anybody said it. So the React part 1, again, you don't need to know anything about this. What I wanted to show you is modules, import, export. So if I go to the introduction, where's the link at? I saw it. Oh, here it is. So on the exercises of the React part 1, and I go to the repository, this is not in our project thing. It's a separate one. So when we get to this, we'll have to refork this thing. But what I wanted to show you is how they do the import export. So here's part 1 exercises. If I go to the index.html, that's HTML. We want VS. So I'm going to go to source, and I'll just pick a component. And again, you're not expected to know what any of this stuff is. All we're looking for here is the import and export keywords. That's all we're doing. So if you look right here in React, this is how they import. This is how they export. So the whole concept here, and I'm going to show you how I did it in Angular, the whole concept here is that you need to understand that you can import and export projects or modules, components. You'll hear some of these interchangeably, like a component is a module. It's just called a component in React and Angular. So whenever you import, if you stress too much on it needs to be const input equals require blah blah blah, that is very specific for Node, and it's actually specific for older Node. Whenever we get to newer Node, they have frameworks like React and Angular that then we switch into a different kind of subset of Node that uses imports and exports slightly differently. So again, the main concept of this is not that you now know how to do imports and exports with React, but you will see this in code all the time. And you need to know that whenever I say import, the code that I'm using, this React component, I did not want to. Click the wrong thing. Like this one's not even importing anything, it's just exporting. Here we go. So whenever this says import classes from this, that means that the code, we are grabbing the code from this location and injecting it here, and we're using it down here. So you have to understand that process of we will be using other people's codes, we will be using our own code from different places, and we have to tell it to import or export because it won't know to do that. So that was a React. I'm going to show you that cat tracker app that I've shown before. Is that this one? Yeah. So this is the contact component. Again, we say components, they're the same thing as a module. So a module and a package. So whenever you're talking about hierarchy of structures, there's a data type. There are objects or classes, and an object and classes consist of multiple data types. There are modules that consist of multiple functions and objects, and then there's packages which are consistent of multiple modules. So there's a hierarchy of that stuff. Yeah. So this is what I'm used to because I'm more used to Angular. So we do imports this way. So this Angular router, Angular forms are Angular specific, but this thing right here, this says, go grab the contact service from, and anytime you see the ... dash or even dash, that means it's my local one. Like I created that. It wasn't Angular that created that. So this actually lives, and that actually gives you the full path right there. But it lives on my machine, where these other ones, I downloaded everybody downloads through that Node modules or different ways that we do that. We download a local copy of this stuff, but we don't actually, we didn't make this. So that's how you import. And then export is just export like this. So I don't have a thing at the bottom like you guys are used to right now that says export down at the bottom. What we do on components is we just export right along with the class definition. Again, this is just saying there's multiple ways to import and export. You're going to learn the framework that you need to learn and just do it however it says to do it. But every language has its own way of doing it. That could be one reason you use Git, because it's always saved in the cloud. But I think I have shown enough of import export. So let's actually do. All right. I have two other bigger concepts that I want to talk about. One is this amazing graded assignment 2, I want to go over some key pain points that people have had. So I'm definitely going to go over that. I think as soon as I get to go over this, we'll take like a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and I will go over all the exercises and all the things. And I'm not expecting you to read any of this yet, but then I'll go over all the exercises and show you some good and bad things to do. So that's the goal. So I'm going to start on graded assignment 2. I'm going to zoom in and get it all situated for you. I think this is what they give you at first. They give you this old point structure that is just an object. They give you the old Scrabble scorer. What I have seen a lot of people do that is not needed, but it's perfectly fine to do. I don't think any of the tests actually test this function. So you can mess up this function all you want to, and I don't think it really does much. It's just there for your starter code, such as some people, they did like a score plus equals score or something. They did it right there. You can do this. You can add scores into here, or return letter points. I guess no. This is a string that does that. So you can put a score in here if you want to and have it return a score so that it can help you with your scoring part of this, but it's not needed. You actually don't have to touch this thing at all. Some other key things. We talked about the internal prompt. You're going to actually try to get their word and save it here or return it. I think that's what I would do. I would say let word equals input something, 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 and then return word. And of course, this is horrible code, right? Because I'm not actually going to set it equal to a console log. I'm going to set it to an import question something or other. Now, the difference here is if I have a function with initial prompt and I actually collect and return a word, that means down at the bottom where my initial prompt is, I need to accept that word. So I'm going to say, let word equal this, because now I'm returning something. And then I can pass this word into the scorer. Okay, again, this is horrible code. I'm just setting you up with an idea of, now that I got this word from my initial prompt, now I can do like a scorer. It's not going to be scorer prompt, just scorer, whatever this is, and I can pass in the word to that, and hopefully my scorer is going to return a score. So then you're going to collect the score. You can do stuff like this in your run program. You should not have anything with logic in it in here. What I mean by that, there should not be any if statements or for loops or any type of manipulation. All the manipulation should come from functions. So you might have 3, 4, 5 things in here, but you aren't going to have a whole line of code in here. That's not the purpose of the run program. You first need to get a word, then you need to get a score, and then you need to whatever the next thing is. But don't put if or for things in here. The next big thing that some people were getting confused about was this transform. The transform, you're going to take this old point structure and you want to transform it. And I think the book actually does give you the thing that this is supposed to transform it to. It says the old point structure is this, and the new point structure is this thing right here. It says hard coding this will not pass the test, but your new point structure should be A A is the key, 1 is the value. B is the key, 1 is the value. C is the key, 1 is the value. So what you're doing is you're reverting, like you're inversing these. So A would be actually the key and 1 would be the second thing. So right here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 keys with 26 values distributed. The other one, if you did it correctly, will have 26. Every single letter will have its own key, and then the value will be the score. So hopefully that. Yeah. So and I'll talk about that next thing that you guys are talking about here in a second. So the transform, are there any, if you have any questions about what the transform function should do, you are going to actually pass in the old point structure. And I might be giving this new point structure equals, I think the book tells you this. Something like this. I think it says something like that. You want the new point structure to be the transform of the old point structure. So then in the transform, you need to write code here that goes through every single one of these. So it's going to go through 1A and create A1, and then it's going to go 1E and create E1, and it's going to go 1I and create I1. It's going to go through those and invert those. So that's what the transform and the new point structure should be doing. The other key thing, and this is to break or to make the test work. So let's actually open up the test and see what goes here. It's usually this number, this last text here. Several people have had some concerns with this, so I want to go over what this test means. It expects the solution. Well, what is the solution? If I go to the top of this text, the test document, it says that the solution is the Scrabble score. So anytime you see solution in here, it's talking about your Scrabble score. Oh, this is where I saw that new point structure. I don't know if you guys saw it. It says that whenever it grabs the new point structure, it should look like this. So that's what it's supposed to look like. Do you see how these are not in alphabetical order? They're in like number order. It doesn't actually matter because key value pairs, it's going to select them. Those are not an ordered key value pair. They're just a key value pair. So don't worry if it's out of order. But go back to my original thing. So when it says solution here, it's talking about your Scrabble score. It's saying that your scoring algorithm. So if I go over here to the scoring algorithms, it's saying that the first element, the zeroth element of this. So I don't have anything in here right now. So I could just open this up and create an element. It says that it's expecting an object. So it does not define what the entire object is, but it does say that that object has to contain a score function. So I know, based on this test, that the first element in here, I'm not putting everything in there. I'm just making sure that 17 works. That it has to have a score function in it. And that score function has to be the same as your simple scorer. So it has to have this in it, and then this is going to match up to your simple score that I haven't written out yet. It's saying that it has to have this. Now, here's the biggest question that a lot of people had. Can I, or how do I create objects in here? And you can create objects in here by doing this right here. I have just created 3 objects in here. and you can hard code them inside the brackets. I don't know if everybody logically thought to do that, because I did not. They were like, throw 3 objects in there. And I was like, oh, let me go create those objects. So what I did right above here is I did let, algorithm 1. These are horrible naming conventions. Do not follow my lead on this. But I would say this, and then I would put this inside of here. And then instead of creating them here, I only had a list of algorithm 1, algorithm 2, algorithm 3, and I made my objects outside of here, and I just threw them in. Either way works. You could create your objects inside of here, or you can create your objects outside and pass it in. The thing that matters for the test, again, the scoring algorithm 0. Well, what is the scoring algorithm 0? Well, that's algorithm 1. Well, what is algorithm 1? Well, algorithm 1 is this thing. Well, does my score function equal simple score? And it says that, remember, it has to equal simple score. So you can create the objects outside and throw them in, or you can create them inside. I think that was a big confusing point. Now, another confusing point is you cannot have 2 variables the same. So if my score function is simple score, I can't do that here. I can't have it as the object name and as the function name. So you could do, this might actually be an okay naming convention. So this is the simple score algorithm, which has the simple score function inside of it. However you want to do that, but then you have to make sure that your variables, you pass in this object into this. And again, your object isn't just going to be this. You need to read if you haven't got to this, you need to read, there's more stuff that you need to put inside this object. But I think that was the biggest confusion on this, this last test there. It has to be the same. It's grabbing the Scrabble scorer, and it's checking it to see if that's the same function that's inside there. Yeah, I was also confused at first. So the thing was, they thought that the scorers would be actually the objects, and they're not. I don't think that they do a good job of explicitly telling you, even though now that I know what I'm doing and I reread it, I'm like, well, it is there, but it wasn't as easy to pull out. But yeah, you need to create your own objects, whether separately or inside there. And then the transform is the other thing that you have to do. And that you look back at the object things and being able to look at the key and values, and you're more or less pulling out every key value pair and switching the key and value to the value and key. Fine. Yeah, if it does say scoring function, then yeah. Okay, I'm going to make an announcement. Thank you, Tim, and other people. Make sure that your naming conventions are exactly on this exports thing here. These are the names that you need to be using. If it does say scoring function, maybe that's why people were having such a problem. That was up here. Add and organize scoring things. Oh, you're right. It says scoring function. Huh. But that's an example. Does it say? That's an example. I don't know. Anyway. Another tip that I did read somewhere on the homework chat that I want to make sure to throw out is oftentimes if the and there's a name for it, I can't remember, but if you start typing something, you see all of these possibilities. So make sure that you're typing this exactly how it needs to be, or you can hit tab and it'll fill it out the rest of the word for you. So I use tab all the time. So even if I want to select down, I just hit the down button and it goes through, and then I hit tab on the one I want. One other thing I want to show you that actually goes with what we're doing here, the new thing we're learning rather than the graded assignment. I'm going to try to go to my finished one and rerun it again. Force checkout. Discard. Don't care. Right. So if I do node index and I run it, hello, it doesn't matter which one I'm doing. And I know that's small, don't worry about it. It's not that important. What I want to show you is that it worked. That's all that matters down here, is that it worked. The thing I want to show you here is on the exports. Do you see how all the exports are in key value pairs? This thing right here is saying, here's the key, here's the value that I want to throw out. So that means if I am outside of this module, these are the names I need to use. If I am inside this module, these are the names that I am pulling from. What's really cool about this is if it's the same, you don't even need it. So if I just delete all of the values, Node is smart enough to just pick the internal and use it as the external. This is taking way longer than I thought it would. All right, so I can do this, and whenever I hit node whatever, again, you don't need to read it as much as understand that it says enter a word to score. So it is working. It worked just fine. It scored it. If I do npm test, again, you don't need to see every little word here, so I'm not zooming in, but you can see the nice green at the bottom that says 17 passed, and I just got rid of all this stuff here. Here's the other cool thing about modules. The only module that is used in index, the only function is this run program. So I can actually just go ahead and delete all this stuff. And when I go to node index and I run my file, it runs. So again, you don't need to see exactly everything I typed in, but I said a word and it scored it just perfectly fine. Because run program is the only thing that's called out here. On the other hand, when I do npm test, I am now failing all of my tests because the tests are looking at your exports. So the test says, look up at the top, I see how it imports. It imports a solution. It says, hey, go ahead and grab all this Scrabble scorer stuff and hold it in this solution variable. And then when I say solution.transform, the only access I gave it is to run program. The only thing I said, hey, external world, the only thing I'm allowing you to see is this run program. And so the test is like, hey, I want to see this transform function, but in my exports, I said, nope, you can only see the run program. So just throwing those tidbits of information out there. You still need all of these things in here because of your tests, so don't just delete everything. Yeah. All right. Here's what I want to do. I want to give you guys about a 4-minute break here. I'm going to go to the restroom real quick. I'm going to get me some water. And then I'm going to pull up the exercises. And we're going to go through the exercises, and then I'll let you out for studio. So I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to turn it back to the amazing Bug Hunter screen here. So if you just want to, I wouldn't probably leave, but if you wanted to turn off your camera for a second, you'll see me come back on here in a second. So take a little bit of a break, stretch your legs if you need to. Did everybody look in their graded assignment too and see if they were if they use scoring versus scorer function? If you haven't done that, I'll give you 60 seconds or so. And yeah. Right. I still haven't added my shortcut for my terminal. Like I can make my code just that text of the thing inside my code window go bigger and smaller without making everything go weird. But I haven't added my shortcut for my terminal yet. So my terminal might be small today, but I'll make sure you guys know what it's saying if you can't see it. All right. I want to go over, there's two different practice problems here. There's just the exporting modules thing, and then there's the exercises. I want to go over both, but this is, I want to walk you through exactly how I did this one. I think I copied and pasted these lines of code directly from the book. If I didn't, then I can't remember how I came up with them, but yeah, I think I just copied and pasted these from the book. So to remind ourselves, we have practice being the object that is going and grabbing the practice exports. And so if I go to the practice exports, we can see that we have 3 functions here. And as of right now, I am actually exporting all 3 of those. And again, it's perfectly fine to do this, but like these are the same. So just to reiterate, I technically can just say, hey, go export these things. And if they're the same name, I can still use them over here. So I'm going to run this. This is going to use the practice.is palindrome, the practice.even or odd, and the practice.random array element. And I think this will not be anything surprising to you. And it says true, that this is odd, and then it goes through and it randomizes these things in my array, and it prints out 3 different things down here. So don't worry about the console that much. It's mainly seeing what's going on here. Now, this is really how I do approach things. One of the first thing I did already is, hey, do we really need these things, or can I just get rid of them? And as I showed you, they work. I am under the belief that less is more. So you could actually just put all of these right next to each other here. But when it really comes down to it, the reason why I don't care about this is in Angular and React. So most of the stuff that you guys are going to see, we are not going to export things like this. This is how everything was exported like 10 years ago. But nowadays, all these different frameworks do it differently. So again, I don't care that you understand every little thing here. I do want to show you that is palindrome is this top one here, is palindrome. And I can change is it really a palindrome is going to map to this thing. And then whenever I come over here, it's going to say, hey, I don't know what this is palindrome is. So I can change this. Is it really a palindrome is technically the name of the exported function. So this should work. So that does work. So again, this is what is export. This is what everybody else outside of this file sees. This is the value we are throwing inside that. All right, so I'm going to change that back. As you can see, this is literally what I do all the time. This helps solidify if I'm thinking about it right. So I encourage you guys to play around with this. The other common problem that I saw was not problem, but things that people were confused about is if I'm only going to put one function in here and I'm like, hey, I'm just going to export the is palindrome. That means that the even or odd's not going to work. So I'm going to comment that one out because it's not going to work. I'm also going to comment out this for loop because the random array element's not going to work. But as of right now, I would expect this to work, except it's not. When it goes here, it says that is practice dot is palindrome is not a function. And people were like, well, it is a function. I go over here and it is a function. It says it right here. And so this was a key pain point for some of you. If you export and do not use these things mean it's an object. So here I'm saying export this object that is a palindrome and save that whole entire object as practice. So practice, to get inside the object, I want the function this. So this will work. I put the brackets around there. So I think somebody in the practice, it said console log and then do type of. Is that right? So I'm just going to do this real quick and show you. So if I do type of practice right now, it's going to say that it's an object. And that's because I'm exporting with the curly braces, which means it's an object. If I get rid of the curly braces, I'm going to now run this type of, and it's actually a function. So this is a function. This is an object where I need to go inside the object and do the dot is palindrome to actually call the function. Hopefully that helps a little bit, because I saw several people, and some people are like, well, if you only export one thing, then you don't have to do it. I'm only exporting one thing. It's how I'm exporting it. If I do the curly braces, it's an object, so I have to go inside the object and do the dot. If I just do the function, I guess I didn't show that. If I just do the function, that means whenever I do this line, it's not going to like it. It's going to say it's not a function. And I just do the practice. The is palindrome is the practice because it's exporting as a function. So this is your function. And so this one works. It's a function, and then this is true. And then to be the randomness that is in my head, if anybody is scared enough to do that, I did stuff like this, and it said it was false, and I didn't like that. So then I had to go over here and say, I want Taco Cat to work. So I did to lowercase, and then I copied and pasted this over here and put it on there. And I said, I want my Taco Cat to work. And now it says that Taco Cat is true. Some of you might be wondering, well, I wouldn't have done it that way. I would have done it this way. And I think this way would work as well. If you did the two lowercase before trying to do all this, rather than doing all of it all at once, yep, Taco Cat's still a palindrome. So good question, which is best practice? I think if you're talking about performance, even though I think at your guys' level that's not a concern, I think performance, you'd probably want to go with just the function because the way that handles in memory is just a little bit different than an object. On the other hand, I prefer consistency and readability. That's my main preaching point, no matter where I go. And for that, I would always export it as an object, because then you are always doing the same thing every single time. You'll always do the dot notation if you do it as an object. You'll always know that it's an object coming in and then how to get to the functions underneath. So for me, I would always export with the brackets. I would always export it this way, because this will work 100% of the time, no matter if you're doing one thing or 10 things. Where if you do it the other way, it only works that one way. And then you got to actually like think and look at this file again and say, oh, did I do that as a function or did I do that as an object? Or if you just do it as an object, it'll work every time. Is there much reasoning to change names when exporting? There is, and it's usually if a function is doing something internally, you might want to name what it's doing internally different than what it is doing externally. And so for most of our cases, they'll probably be the same, but I can't think of a great example off the top of my head, but I know that I've worked in code where I'm like, this function doesn't make any sense. Like the naming of the function doesn't make any sense. But then I go into that object, that class, and I'm like, oh, now I at least see why somebody came up with that name, but it doesn't match how it's being used externally. So there are some use cases where you want them different. All right, so question. Building objects outside set to a variable and build array of variables versus. I'd have to get more explanation on that to know kind of what's thinking on your head, but again, if you do need to, and as a beginner, this isn't like you can't become a software engineer if you do this. It isn't one of those things, but it is to level you up. It will make you stand out if you can start talking about scope. And if I'm in here and I set this array here, I don't know if this is what you were talking about or not, but should I set this array here or should I set it inside? Well, I want to set it out here, this array, because the random array element is not talking about this array, it's talking about any array. I can put 5 different arrays up here and run this on all 5 of them super fast. So that's the reason we separate out code, is once we get it to work generically, we're going to take that, we're going to put it somewhere else and just have an entry point to it and then put stuff in it and expect something out of it. So it's like closed off code. Hi. I do want to get us, I think we're doing perfect on timing. I want to go over the other one. I want to go over and potentially some Git stuff, because you can see, look at this. This is like crazy. My mouse is messing up, sorry. All right. So let's go into the exercise 1. So I want my index array. I have already done npm install, and I know that because I have a node modules in there. I had to change directories for a second. Okay. I'm going to tell you this is what I would do. Anytime I want to import something, it's going to be a require, and it's going to be something like that. Here again is the reason why I always use the object and not just the function. Because whenever I do this, I started my sentence before it made sense. Hold on. Okay, so I want averages. This is the one that is inside this one and inside that one. There we go. Did anybody play with the dot? Do you have I know you don't need it, but some people I think put the .js there. I think it'll accept either way. But good question. Do we need to do npm install if we're using an if we're using an external library? So if we're using code that is already here, it already knows where it lives. When you do npm install, what it does is it goes and grabs this readline sync code and shoves it in your node modules. So because this code already lives on the machine, I don't need to do npm install anymore for this specific thing. The other thing that npm install does is it goes and it specifically looks inside this package.json and pulls out the dependencies here to make sure that they're in here. So again, I don't know if it was because I added this. No, we do not need to do npm install for my own stuff. But for this readline sync, I don't, even though I didn't already have it here, because it was in the package.json and I did npm install, it went ahead and got this, even though I wasn't even using it yet. Just to go over, are we good with how to go inside a folder and then go grab it versus this is the print all, which is the display. And then this one is the random select. All right. So I did not export anything on these yet. That's what I want to go do right now. The cool thing is, if you hold control, you can see, so if I don't hold control, it does not light up. If I hold control, it lights up, and then when I click on it, it actually opens me up into that file. I really like I hold control and just go over anything that it'll let me, and then I just start clicking on things to see what it does. So it's one of my favorite tricks. Here, it tells you, hey, export all the functions. So what I don't like about mine is it doesn't auto fill me in. If I had to guess, it doesn't automatically fill this in because it's old. It doesn't, like, this isn't a common node thing anymore. But I do need to export both of these. And again, I'm doing the shortcut and I'm not actually typing in the colon with the other one because that's what I'm used to. I'm going to go to display. All I want here is the print all. So this is the one I was talking about with whenever I do this, instead of just doing print all, because you can do this, this is valid, 100% valid. The reason I don't is to be consistent. So again, whenever I call this print all, I'm going to have to call it whatever I named it over there, dot print all. If I just did this, I could just call it by whatever I called it outside. Either way is fine. I like consistency. Oh, this one I forgot to erase. So there it is. So I've already got that one. So whenever I call these, so call the print all, because of how I exported, I have to do print all, which this print all, my screen's a little too big. I'm going to go down 1, 2, there we go. This print all is the first print all, and then I'm going inside that object and saying, do the print all function inside there. So I could just call this print instead of print all. So print grabs all the display things, and then print all is the actual function that I'm calling inside that. Well, and that is true. If I do this, I can do this, and it'll show me the different things that I can grab. Actually, that won't do what I want. But yes, fine. Pass in the necessary arguments. I think this was astronauts. Okay, so print on names and then tests and scores. There we go. Call the average for tests. So remember, this is the averages dot averages for tests. And I think I need to pass in a J and scores. I'm just doing this from memory. You're not supposed to, I'm not like, I'm just doing this because I've done it before. It is doing J because it's iterating. Remember, J through the length. So that's why they do a J. This is averages dot averages for test. And again, it wants to know the index and all of the scores. So it can pass in all those. And then random select. I think it's astronauts. So again, like I said, for consistency's sake, I like it this way. But again, if I was not dealing with 3 different things and I was only dealing with one, I might not choose this way. It really does not matter. So don't overthink that. Find a way that you like and do it. Would you like to display all the scores? Yes, yes, yes. And cat is the next spacewalker. So that's what I know you don't need to read every little thing, but scores should come out and the grid should come out. Is there a downside to exporting functions you may not use? Okay, so this is where I'll talk about that. I want to see if there's anything else first. Exporting as an object. An object contains the function, so you have to use the dot notation. Yeah, I'm confused on your exact question about the average. Well, so the averages, because there was multiple things you had to export as an object. So average is the object, and the object is the whole entire file. So the object is both of these. So whenever I say averages in my other file, I'm talking about both of these. I'm talking about anything I exported as an object. So averages says, which object am I even looking at? Well, I'm looking at the averages object, which is this thing. And then which of these do I want to actually use? I want to use this thing. So this is the method of the object that I care about. And then parameter or arguments to pass in, that's whatever arguments you need. Yeah, name.key, you can think of it like that. What was that other question I was? Okay, so there was a question, is there a downside to exporting functions you may not use? Yes, if they're huge. So I'll go back. Any last minute questions on this? I want to show one thing and then I'm off of here. So I'll just minimize it for now. But if we go back to I'll do my Angular, not that one. I'll do my Angular code so you can see that. So on this app here, more newer, sorry, my computer's going slow. I accidentally opened up IntelliJ, so it's sucking all my resources. Right. You want to be able to export anything that anybody else could ever use. So when we're talking about export, the purpose of export is if you need somebody else to use it, you do export it. Even if not everybody's going to use it, you always export anything that you think they might want to use. But for instance, that print all, remember that print all function actually calls other functions inside, but we don't need those other functions, so we're not going to expose those other functions. So you don't have to export anything you don't want them to do. If it's just ran internally, you don't export it. Importing, though, the more modern way to import is to actually call out what you want to import. So again, this is in Angular, but JavaScript does the same thing, or React does the same thing, where this Angular router has, I don't even know. So here, I'm going to do export. This has 154 exported things that you can call, 154. I don't need all of those. I just need this one. So that's why when you're importing, it's good to only import one thing, which is why newer versions of JavaScript allow you to only import one thing. I tried to get that old version, like the stuff that we're doing with require to do only one. And of course, I didn't spend a long time on it, but I couldn't get it to work the way that I wanted to, or else I would have shown that. But the import, whenever we get to newer things, yes, you'll only import the 1 or 2 or 5 things that you want, not so like Angular forms, if I say export, there's 151 different things I can import from Angular forms. I don't want all those because that would take up too much of my resources to do. So I just pull the ones in that I need. So the last thing I really wanted to show you is perfect timing because this gives you a little bit of a break before Studio. I did forget to look at Studio. Let me just pull it up. I don't think there's a lot of coding, if I remember right. If at all, any coding. Modules. Boosting confidence. Oh, it's a lot of discussion things. There you go. Identify which of these you've already done or know that you can accomplish. Hello world on the screen. Change and use variables. Convert the string into a number. Construct a for loop to repeat a task 100 times. If else statements. Build, modify, and access an array. Design and call a function. Call one function from within another function. Find, fix bugs in segment of non-working code. Now, this is vague. There's not just one way to do this. There's multiple ways to do the fixing bugs. So, kind of cool. I'm going to try to tell your IAs that if they hear anything here, I want you guys posting some of this stuff so that more people can see. So don't just say them and then shrivel off into a corner. Like, actually spend time talking through those things. But last little thing, because I just saw it here, imposter syndrome. Like on Saturday, there is a person, high-level architect. He's been working for 30 years as a software engineer architect. He switched jobs this past year, and he said that whenever he switched jobs a month in, he's like, should I even be here? Am I good enough? And he's been working 30 years in the industry, and he's amazing at what he does. So this imposter syndrome will never go away. It hits all of us every single time, especially whenever you change to something new. So just kind of get used to it, I guess. There's no real way to not have it. but there are ways to kind of get through it. And my biggest suggestion with that is to surround yourself with people that know who you are and know your strengths, and having that kind of safety net around you is huge. So hopefully some people on here by the end of these 8 months will join your nice safety net of people that you can confide in. So anyway, I'll let you go with that. Any other questions? Hey, I'm not going to read those comments. You guys can read those. So you guys have a good one. Get to your studios, but then you'll probably have a 5 or so minute break. So check in with your IAs. I don't think a lot of you will need my help for the studio part, but if you want to reach out, I will be around. If you guys need anything, especially like a graded assignment, that kind of stuff. But have a good one. I'll see you guys next time. Stay in touch.
Hey, Philip.